My boyfriend, Dan, and I genuinely used to love taking long, almost impromptu road trips to places that we've never been. Typically, in the spring and fall, around our birthday months, mine's in April, his is October, we would randomly decide on where to go, load up the car, and just head out onto the road. Of course, he would have to schedule the time off, and I would have to make sure my clients knew that I would be out for a few days. So, they weren't 100% impromptu. There was always some planning and scheduling, but we would pretty much randomly choose our destination the week of the trips. He and I have been together for close to 10 years now, and we did this every year from the 5th year we were together all the way to 2019. When we had the money and the time, we would just go. On the particular trip back in early 2019 that this whole glitch happened, we had actually planned to take a long drive from our home in Madison Heights, Michigan, all the way out to a place called Bryce Canyon National Park in southern Utah. This trip was a particularly long one. It was about a 28-hour drive, so we had planned on taking a little more than a week off, and we were going to stop around the halfway mark, somewhere between the southwestern tip of Nebraska and the top corner of Colorado. If you've never driven that little section of this country, there really isn't much there between North Platte and Sterling. But it's still beautiful, at least to me. I remember this whole plan because I recall how much we had actually planned out on this specific trip. It was a bit out of character for us to do so much plotting along the way, but we felt it was necessary due to the length of the drive. And while some people may say that we could have just gone straight through if one of us slept and the other one drove, the problem with that is that I actually don't have a license due to a medical issue that I'm not going to get into here. But he obviously knew this and he was totally fine with driving and stopping about midway. Plus, it gave us more time to take it all in, which isn't that the point of road trips anyways? Back to it. The plan, as stated, was to leave our home at 5 in the morning. We would drive all the way out to the tiny tourist town of Ogallala, Nebraska, and spend the night there. This would be about 16 hours, and then the remainder of the trip from Ogallala to Bryce Canyon in the morning, which was only about 11 hours. Splitting it with the majority in the first half meant that we could go a bit slower on the trip throughout literally all of Colorado, if necessary, and we would still get there at a good time to check into the hotel. We followed this plan as we had basically written it. We left home on time, got out to Ogallala, stayed there overnight, and then planned to head out in the morning. While day 1 was perfect, it was day 2 where things kind of went awry. We both woke up in a slight bit of a panic because when we opened our eyes, we noticed it was already sunny out. Our plan was to head out around 5 in the morning and get there at 5 to 6 in the evening. But when we checked the clock, it was already 8:30. For some reason, Dan's phone didn't charge and had died overnight, which caused our main alarm to not go off. And while this isn't necessarily the glitch, we checked the charger and the outlet. He unplugged the phone and plugged it back in, and it started charging. It was definitely weird, but it's not what the story is about. Because we woke up late, we decided to go ahead and just get breakfast since our plan was already messed up. We stopped at a local diner, and we had our food and enjoyed the late morning, and then headed out onto the highway at around 10:30 or so. This meant, if we drove directly, we would get to our hotel destination at 10 at the earliest. So it wasn't too bad, but it was still way off schedule, which definitely upset Dan. I told him it was fine, and that losing a few hours was acceptable since we planned to take it slow today anyways. After a bit, we were on the road and back to a steady pace, so things were getting as close to back on track as they could. After about 3 hours on the highway, heading straight for our destination, Google Maps made a comment about there being heavy traffic ahead, or something about an accident. I can't remember, but it recommended an alternate route, and that would add about 20 minutes to our time. Again, Dan was upset, but we relented and took the route that it said that we should. Adding this extra half hour meant that we would get there at around 11 or so, and that we would be entering Utah somewhere close to 6 p.m. This is where the glitch actually happens. By this time, we had been on the road for 3.5 hours, and we got on the road at 10:30 a.m. This means that it was only around 2 in the afternoon. Only a few minutes after we get back onto the route, Google Maps chimes in again and does its little "Welcome to Utah." When it said this, I chuckled and said, "See, we're making good time." Which was apparently the wrong thing to say, because my boyfriend pulled the car over and just stared at the phone blankly. I asked him what was going on, because it kind of freaked me out. He just slowly looked back over at me, and then back to the phone, and then once more at me with that look of pure shock. At first, for me, it didn't click, but he quickly explained why he was so confused. There was absolutely no way for us to already be hitting Utah. It's around 7 hours to get from Ogallala to the Utah border on 70 West, which is the highway we had been taking. We left at 10:30 because we woke up late. We had to add half an hour because of the accident, which meant that it was going to be 7.5 hours after the time we left at the minimum, which was going to be somewhere in the realm of 6 p.m. or later. The time that it said we had entered Utah and the time on the clock was 2:18. Based on this time, we would have had to have been going at a ridiculous speed to get there, and we weren't. He was adamant that it was impossible, but he reloaded maps on his phone, made me load it up on my phone, and he checked the clock on every device that we owned. They all synced up. We were 4.5 hours away from Bryce Canyon. It was 2:18 p.m. Somehow, without any logical explanation, we had managed to get ourselves pretty much back to the original schedule, despite waking up late and the delay on the road. I didn't have an explanation, but I was happy to chalk it up to some kind of miracle. He was not. He was in a weird state of panic, but after a while, we got back on the road and pressed on. We got to the hotel at around 6. We checked in, and he went straight to sleep for the night, which was kind of a bummer, but I could tell this whole thing had messed with his head. Thankfully, it didn't affect him enough to ruin our trip or anything, but it was enough for that to be our last road trip for a while. Obviously, we've missed out on a few because of COVID, but we didn't go anywhere at the end of 2019 or beginning of 2020. Mostly because of him. As much as he won't admit it, I feel like this whole thing has actually given him a weird fear of driving long distances, which is not something he had to deal with prior. I'm hopeful that I'll be able to get him to go on a trip this year, but I'm also not holding my breath. But anyways, that's my glitch, and it's one that I still don't have an answer for to this day. In the summer of 2017, around 2 hours after my grandfather passed away, me and my sister were in a horrific car accident. It was a bit past midnight. We were on our way to my grandpa's house. I was behind the wheel and driving moderately fast. I was supposed to make a U-turn, but the brakes failed, and we hit the guardrail. The front of the car was demolished, and both of us were badly injured. I believe that I lost consciousness for a few seconds, and when I woke up again, I looked at her and saw blood all over her face, and realized that she too had lost consciousness. She was slowly coming to when I squeezed myself out the window and went to the other side to get her out of the car. Her door was stuck, just like mine, so I couldn't get her out. People started to gather around and called 911. The firefighters came and removed the door and finally got her out of the car. When the ambulance was taking us to the hospital, I was having the longest déjà vu of my entire life. I knew which hospital we were going to, even though nobody had told me. I knew how the interior of the hospital looked, somewhere I've never been before, and I knew the name of the doctor who was supposed to stitch me up, and that was someone that I had never met before. It's weird because as soon as me and my sister were alone and could talk to each other, she told me about how she feels like she's been there before and was feeling deja vu the entire time. It might seem normal for people who suffered head trauma to experience these kind of things and read too much into something that isn't actually there, but it's a lot more weird than it seems like at first glance. I believe that both of us died on that timeline, but for some reason our consciousness switched into a parallel version of ourselves in another universe. And the constant feeling of deja vu was because of our consciousness settling into the bodies of our alternate selves with the original consciousness still present, which then caused the feeling of experiencing everything twice. Now, here's something truly bizarre. There was this song called Zalem by Mohsen Chavoshi, which our mom loved and listened to almost every day. Even when my mom didn't play it, my older brother would. It was kind of a signature song in our home back in 2005 to 2007 or '08. So, a few months after the crash, I was having a conversation with one of my co-eds about music. She was without a doubt the #1 fan of Mohsen Chavoshi, to the point that we used to call her Chavoshist. She was talking about her favorite Chavoshi song, and I just remembered all those years of listening to Zalem. I said, "Yeah, he's a good singer. My mom loved Zalem. She used to play it on repeat until someone became sick of hearing it." She frowned and asked me about the song that I mentioned. She said that he doesn't have a song named Zalem. I thought maybe I got the name wrong, so I sang the chorus, and she shook her head and said that that's not a Chavoshi song. She named Farouk as the singer. I swore that the song I used to listen to was Chavoshi's. His voice is unmistakable, and there's no way that I would get that wrong. So she asked me to send her the song. Obviously, I didn't have our old computer in which the song was stored, and I couldn't find our old Chavoshi mix CD. So I googled it, and no matter how much I looked, I could not find it online. I even searched by the lyrics and only found the song Zalem by Farouk. I thought, well, maybe it's the same song and I was wrong all along, so I downloaded it and I listened to it. But the song by Farouk could not be more different from what I remember. Sure, it has the same lyrics, but the melody and genre of it is completely different. So I asked my mom about it, and guess what? She's never heard of it, and neither has my brother who gave us the song in the first place. They have no recollection of that song, whether it be by Chavoshi or Farouk. On the other hand, my sister remembers it. I sang her the chorus and she said it was Chavoshi's song. Somehow she and I have memories about a song which doesn't even exist in this world. I don't know why or even how it's possible, but I sincerely believe that we moved through the dimensions when we were both unconscious after the crash. I've heard stories that happened to other people which are similar to our experience. I don't want to get in too much on this one, but I think it has something to do with my grandpa's death. Maybe we were supposed to die that night, but his death caused an event which led us to move on to another universe, where we did not die. This happened when my cousin and I were teenagers, probably around 15 and 16 respectively. Many members of my family were staying overnight at a hotel after the wedding of another family member. My cousin actually thinks it was for a different person's wedding, but that detail doesn't change the story. I was not one of the people staying the night at the hotel, but I had some time to hang out and have fun with my cousin before my parents were coming to pick me up. We didn't have a lot to do, and we tended to be kind of mischievous when we hung out together. We never did anything crazy, just average dumb kid shenanigans. So, essentially, we decided to just walk/run around different areas of the hotel, exploring, getting snacks, etc. My cousin remembers us knocking on the door to random rooms and running away. At one point, we noticed a middle-aged man in the same hall as us, who was wearing nondescript clothing and had on a tool belt. We tried to act natural as soon as we spotted him, but I'm sure we weren't very convincing. From this point, every time we turned around a corner and checked behind us, this man would be following us. He never yelled at us or said anything, and he never moved at a pace faster than an average walking speed, but it was extremely clear that he was following wherever we tried to go. It freaked us out a lot because we obviously didn't want to get in trouble, plus the dude had a weird energy with his silent, casual walk. We were panicking pretty hard after a few minutes of this, so our plan was to get in the elevator and quickly choose a random floor a few levels up, so that the guy wouldn't know where we went. When we got in the elevator, he was walking toward us from our left side, so when we were inside and turned around, he would have been coming from our right side. And he was maybe 100 feet down the hallway. We go up at least 3 or 4 floors, turn left out of the elevator, and start fast walking in that direction. Within 10 seconds of us getting off the elevator, the same guy rounds a corner a little way down the hall, and is now walking towards us. I distinctly remember saying, "That's not possible," out loud to my cousin as we were rushing back to the elevator. After that, we actually went to the front desk and told the lady working there that we were being followed. And when we described the guy, she told us that he worked there. We spent the rest of the time hidden in a little nook next to the lobby area, where we could stay blocked by a bookshelf. At one point, the tool belt guy did come into the lobby and we saw him talk to the lady at the desk before leaving. I was 100% convinced at that time that I had just seen something completely unnatural and not humanly possible. Even if the guy could have gotten to the elevator to see which floor we'd gone to, there's absolutely no way I could think of that he could have gotten up to the same floor from either a staircase or a different elevator, in time to be walking at us from the opposite direction than he was coming from before, no more than 10 to 15 seconds after we'd gotten out of the elevator. It's always stuck in my mind as something weird, but over the years, I started to write it off as an overactive imagination due to how scared I was in the moment. Then, I just saw my cousin when we hung out over New Year's, and she brought up the hotel and how the man had been following us through the halls. Once she mentioned it, I started to say that, at the time, I thought he had traveled an impossible distance in an impossible amount of time while following us. And before I could even finish recounting the exact scenario, my cousin was nodding that she remembers it too. I'm still not sure what to make of the situation, but it's definitely the weirdest story that I have. Hi folks, I'm here to share with you something that just happened to me. I'm 19 years old and I have a girlfriend of the same age. She's an amazing person, and I can't put into words how much she helped me during 2021. When I'm with her, I feel like I'm the best version of myself, even if I'm not perfect. We've been helping each other out in numerous situations since we started dating, and that's one of the reasons we are so close. That and the fact that we've been friends for ages. Unfortunately, some stuff has been going on with her family. I won't go into detail because I respect her privacy. That said, she is definitely not at her best right now. She's already going through a lot and her relatives keep fighting over her attention, like kids. None of this has anything to do with me, but I'm here to support her as she did for me before. After Christmas, I decided to take her to a hotel so that we could de-stress and stay away from home for a little bit. We went to a place that is famous for having units in several cities here in Brazil. I booked a nice room, and we spent a great day together. However, something weird happened with the elevator of that hotel. Twice. We got there at around 1400. I checked in, and I took the elevator to the top floor. Our room was 967, and the elevator dropped us off to the left of it. We got in, and everything was fine. And we talked about what was happening with her life, and things were getting progressively more fun, as we were both starting to relax and enjoy the moment. At around 1900, after taking a shower, we decided to go out for pizza. There's a Domino's right next to the hotel, and she wanted to try it. As we were leaving, I noticed something odd. The elevator was on the opposite side as it was before. It was to the right of our door. We were both visibly confused. She was following me around and it seemed like we were lost, which is awkward considering that the whole floor is just a straight line. Once we found the elevator, we both assumed that it was just all a big mess, which is pretty normal for my life. So, fine. And we got the pizza, had a great night, and an even better morning. As we were getting ready to go home, packing our things and all that, her mom called her. Once again, I'm not going to get into any details. I will say that her mom was an extremely unpleasant person on the phone, and that made her feel uncomfortable, especially because I was there. And that was it. She now wanted to go home and fast. I noticed that, and we left about 5 minutes later, around 10:50 a.m. However, that damn elevator was to the left side of our door. I couldn't believe it, and my girlfriend was visibly lost as well. That said, she had bigger things to worry about and simply didn't care. Once I tried to point out the oddity to her, she said that I was the one confusing her mind, and that the elevator was always to the left. I just said, okay then, and we left the hotel. Overall, it was an amazing night. The room was great, and I felt unbelievably comfortable during my time there. Me and my girlfriend also spent the New Year's Eve together, and things are getting better, I believe. However, this elevator thing is still on my mind. It didn't scare me, it just made me curious. I literally just posted here, but writing out my story and reading all of your posts really has me reflecting on my glitchy experiences. When I was in college, I was a banquet worker at a hotel. One night we were hosting a wedding and ran out of trash bags. We couldn't find any anywhere, so my boss asked me if I could track down a room service cart and grab anything that I could find, even if it was small. At this point, it was almost 1 a.m. The wedding was winding down and the hotel was quiet. I didn't have access to the room service closet/laundry as a banquet server, so I was literally just going floor to floor hoping someone had left their cart out. Finally, on the 6th floor, I saw a cart at the end of the hallway. I could hear a baby crying, and I saw one of our hotel-provided bassinets in the hall next to a closed room door. I had to pass the bassinet to get to the cart. It was empty, as it should have been. As I got closer, the crying became louder. It made absolute sense to me. It gave me an icky feeling in my stomach, but I thought nothing of it. The baby must be in the room crying, and the parents parked the bassinet outside because they decided not to use it, right? I raided the cart for the roll of bags and noticed that the cart belonged to my friend Juana. She had an Aerosmith sticker on her cart, so I knew it was hers. The next day, I saw her at work and mentioned that I had stolen her bags, and apologized because she had probably had to hunt some down at the beginning of her shift. I then jokingly thanked her for leaving it next to the bassinet/baby room, and joked about how unsettling it felt to be in an empty hotel corridor next to an empty bassinet while listening to a crying baby in the wee hours of the morning. She was like, "That's weird. I cleaned a room on that floor at the very beginning of my shift. I took the bassinet back down to the rollaway storage room first thing yesterday morning. The family checked out before you even got on." We discussed how unusual it was to have more than one family with a baby request a bassinet so close together, especially on the same floor. We rarely had to dig out the bassinets. As I was leaving and clocking out in the laundry room, Juana stopped me to tell me the bassinet should not have been there, and that no other families had requested one. We have a checkout sheet for bassinets and rollaway beds, so that if we need one and we can't find one, we know where they were the last time they were used. Sure enough, Juana's room was the last one to have a bassinet. The sheet showed another coworker checking it out for the family when they arrived, and Juana checking it back into the rollaway room over 12 hours before I saw it in the hallway. I guess technically she could have forged her check-in signature, but there's really no reason for her to have done that. And she clearly recalled returning it to the closet. Regardless of whether or not the bassinet should have been there, the crying baby definitely shouldn't have been. The family had checked out earlier and had been long gone before I went hunting for a cart. This happened while I was in high school. I was driving my mom's car with my best friend in the passenger seat. On the drive home, there's this hill that my friend and I refer to as the hill at the end of the world. We live in a suburban but woodsy area. And this particular hill isn't very big, but the incline of it, and the way it curves a bit just at the top, makes it to where you can't see the other side really at all until the very last moment when you've driven over the top. Until that moment, it almost feels like you're going to just drive into the sky. Also, at the bottom of one side, there's a cute little cemetery, for whatever that's worth. On either side of the road, there's just light woods and some spaced out little ranch-style houses in the distance. No sidewalk and no shoulder. There are cars driving in front of me and in back of me as well, and also coming from the opposite direction. We were driving in the direction of the cemetery. I see the car in front of me crest the hill and disappear below my line of sight. Then, I crest the top of the hill, and just right there in front of me on the other side is a man standing calmly in the middle of my path, looking out into the woods. I had seen him so last minute that I didn't have time to react at all. No time to brake or even try to turn the wheel. We drove right through him. But then there was nothing. No sounds, no bumps, nothing in my rear view mirror, no evidence of anything being there at all. Traffic didn't stop. The cars in back of me drove as normal. I was so confused. I just stared forward, trying to process. My friend turns to me and goes, "Did you just see that?" I turned to her and said, "Did you just see it too?" We pulled over, cars still passing, and walked back to look. There was nothing. No marks or damage on the car, nothing abnormal on or around the road, just nothing. We tried to make sense of it. How could someone have gotten there in the space between me and the car ahead of me? Where would they have come from? They would have had to have sprinted out of the woods, and the man that we saw was standing calmly, almost daydreaming. So, what the hell happened? So here's a fun glitch for you, to some extent. This collection of stories was a last-minute put together because I had forgotten to request stories last week, and Saturday rolled around, and I didn't have any stories, minus the submitted one, for this video. So I had to get in there and get stories requested. I read a bunch of stories, sent out my requests, and as they came in and were accepted, I kind of just packed them into this video. It's not the way I like to do it, but it's how I did it. To some extent, the selection of stories for this video was random from the ones I requested. And the one that was submitted, obviously. Of those stories, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of these 6 stories mention a hotel. 4 of them are almost involved in a hotel for a significant portion of the glitch, but 5 of them mention the hotel. Think on that for a minute. That was 100% not intentional. And I will swear that on my life I have to. Not intentional in any way, shape, or form. But I somehow managed to get 5 stories out of the 6 to be hotel-related somehow. Completely random. Unexpected, unintentional, and kind of awesome. So, hotels are glitchy hellscapes at this point. Huge thank you to everyone who listened and everyone who let me read their stories, as well as the person that submitted the story to me for this week. Thank you so much. Always appreciated. If you liked the video, please do hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't like the video, hit the thumbs up button anyways, out of spite. Spite me with your love. Or something. You can also subscribe if you're new to the channel. If you're not new, don't subscribe again, because that'll unsubscribe, and that's the opposite of subscribe, and that's not what you want to do, is it? If you're really feeling it, if you're really feeling it, that's a reference no one's going to get, you can leave me a comment with this week's Word of the Week. Now, last week's word of the week was a fairly easy one, I thought. Value. I had 2 comments on last week's word of the week. Despite the video doing really well, only 2 people commented. So a huge, very specific shout out to AM for I value these videos a lot for the enjoyment they bring me, and Matthew Dirk for I really value the compilation that led me to your channel and many other good channels. AM and Matthew Dirk, thank you both. You are amazing people for giving me a word of the week last week. Moving on to this week's word of the week, I will say it is an excellent word. This week's word of the week is excellent. I don't know what I was going to say there. Anyway, it's excellent. EXCELLENT, of the highest or finest quality, exceptionally good for its kind, being so to an extreme degree, excelling, surpassing others in some good quality, etc., etc. Definitions on screen. If you leave that word, you will get the shout-outs, as these 2 did, next week on the screen. If not, well, that's all right. That said, I hope you all have a beautiful day. This is a long outro, holy crap. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I hope I see you next time. But of course, until then, my friends, sleep well.